West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goët.
Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this one today because it's like deja vu all over again. As Yogi Berra famously said, another day, another pathetic and desperate attempt by Donald Trump to keep from being sentenced, to try to convince Judge Juan Merchan to kick his sentencing date until after the presidential election. Let's start with the new reporting. This from PBS. Headline: Trump asks judge to delay his hush money sentencing until after November election. Let me just correct an obvious typo there. It's not a hush money case. It's an election interference case. Donald Trump criminally falsified business records, yes, to cover up hush money payments, but why? To gain unfair advantage in the 2016 presidential election. So it's an election interference case. That was the purpose of the crimes Donald Trump committed. That article begins, Donald Trump is asking the judge in his New York hush money criminal case to delay his sentencing until after the November presidential election. In a letter made public Thursday, a lawyer for the former president and current Republican nominee suggested that sentencing Trump as scheduled on September 18, about 7 weeks before Election Day, would amount to election interference. Oh, the irony. So committing crimes to try to steal an election doesn't constitute election interference in Trump's estimation, but being convicted by a jury of your peers, being held accountable for those crimes, and being sentenced on those convictions somehow constitutes election interference. The article continues. Trump lawyer Todd Blanche wrote that a delay would also allow Trump time to weigh next steps after the trial judge Juan Merchan is expected to rule September 16 on the defense's request to overturn the verdict and dismiss the case because of the U.S. Supreme Court's July presidential immunity ruling. Quote, there is no basis for continuing to rush, Trump's lawyer, Blanche, wrote. Blanche sent the letter to Merchan on Wednesday after the judge rejected the defense's latest request that he step aside from the case. Okay, friends, let's stop there and let's turn to this one-page letter that Trump's lawyer sent to Judge Merchan, imploring him to kick the sentencing date until after the presidential election. I'm just going to hit the lowlights. There are no highlights. And not surprisingly, yet again, this letter reads more like an unhinged 2 a.m. social media post from Donald Trump himself, as opposed to a work of lawyerly scholarship. Dear Justice Merchan, the court should adjourn any sentencing in this case until after the 2024 presidential election. But Trump's lawyer helpfully adds, though one should not be necessary, meaning a sentencing hearing should not be necessary, because dismissal and vacature of the jury's verdict are required based on presidential immunity. Notwithstanding the court's ruling on the disputed recusal issue, the requested adjournment would prospectively mitigate the asserted conflicts and appearances of impropriety, which are also the subject of an ongoing congressional inquiry. Friends, this guy's got some nerve. Just yesterday, Judge Merchan denied Donald Trump's third motion to remove him from the case, to recuse Judge Merchan from presiding over the case. And just yesterday, in a written order, Judge Merchan said, this court now reiterates for the third time that which should already be clear. Innuendo and mischaracterizations do not a conflict create. Recusal is therefore not necessary, much less required. Yesterday, for the third time, Judge Merchan rejected this unsupported nonsense. And yet today, the defense attorney files a letter raising virtually the same issue, saying that, this is to mitigate the asserted conflicts and appearances of impropriety. Friends, this is where sanctioning bad faith lawyers would come in really handy. Let's go back to the defense letter to Judge Merchan. Apropos of absolutely nothing, they drop in the middle of this letter. Tim Walz wrongly referred to this case in a public speech as the Democrat Party's nominee for vice president. And what did Tim Walz allegedly say? Where's the evidence? And why is it of legal significance? Why is it relevant to this request you're making of Judge Merchan? Friends, let me read another section of this letter because I think this highlights one of the true concerns Donald Trump has and why Donald Trump is desperate to try to kick his sentencing hearing until after the election. Another reason being he didn't want to land his butt in jail. But here is another reason that I think he is really scared to move toward a sentencing date in his case. DANY, the district attorney for New York, Alvin Bragg, and his prosecutors should not be permitted to file a public sentencing submission that will include the threat of punishment in a manner that is personally and politically prejudicial to President Trump and his family and harmful to the institution of the presidency. Wow, that sentence is rich. So first of all, Donald Trump doesn't want the public to see what the prosecutors might put in their sentencing memo. He doesn't want to be punished for his crimes. News alert. When you're sentenced for your criminal conduct, it's supposed to be punishment. It represents punishment for your crimes. He also says he doesn't want to be punished in a way that would be personally or politically prejudicial. Does he want the sentencing to be complimentary of him? And then he goes on to say that he doesn't want the sentencing to be prejudicial to his family or harmful to the institution of the presidency. Well, let's see. What conduct might have been prejudicial to his family? Maybe Donald Trump having an encounter with a porn star while his wife was home nursing their infant son, and then paying the porn star hush money so you could cheat in an American election. Feels like that would be a bit prejudicial to one's family. and then writing reimbursement payments to his lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, who made those hush money payments on behalf of and for the benefit of Donald Trump, while you're actually the President of the United States, writing those criminal reimbursement checks and falsifying business records to cover up the true nature of those payments. That sort of feels like a stain on the presidency, prejudicial to the presidency. Not holding a criminal president accountable for the conduct, that's not prejudicial to the presidency. Finally, setting aside naked election interference objectives, there is no valid countervailing reason for the court to keep the current sentencing date on the calendar. So what did Donald Trump's lawyers do there in conclusion? They pretty expressly accused Judge Juan Merchan of engaging in election interference if he deigns to actually sentence Donald Trump for his crimes on September 18th. Now, friends, let me finish with this, and it's not a particularly positive note. I do think Judge Merchan will largely laugh this request out of court. And then on September 16th, 2 days before the scheduled sentencing date, Judge Merchan will resolve the presidential immunity issue. I have a feeling he will deny Donald Trump's motion to toss the case out based on presidential immunity, in large part because the overwhelming majority of the criminal conduct by Donald Trump happened either before he was president, so no presidential immunity, or did not constitute official acts of a president of the United States, so it wouldn't enjoy presidential immunity. But here is the note of caution. Ordinarily, immunity decisions that are made by trial court judges are immediately appealable. We've talked about this before. I'm not going to do the deep dive explanation on why that is. So here's what might happen. I hope it doesn't. But what might happen is Judge Merchan denies Donald Trump's motion to dismiss the case based on presidential immunity on September 16th and says we're proceeding to sentencing 2 days later, September 18th, and Donald Trump will make a beeline for any and all appeals courts, both state and federal, and try to convince some appellate court to put a stop to the sentencing date that will be scheduled for 2 days later. And it could very well be that some appellate court, up to and including the Supreme Court, puts a stop to or stays the sentencing. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that Judge Merchan not only denies the motion to dismiss, but proceeds to sentencing on September 18th, sentences him to prison, which he so richly deserves. Because if you want to deter tomorrow's aspiring dictator, you've got to punish today's aspiring dictator for the crimes he committed to try to steal the presidency. You know, probation is dead wrong in this case. Prison time is what's required. So I hope Judge Merchan proceeds to sentencing on the 18th. I hope he imposes prison time. Then the question becomes, does Judge Merchan stay execution of the sentence? In other words, put it on hold, put it on pause, even though he's imposed the sentence, not order Donald Trump into confinement and give Donald Trump an opportunity to appeal it up the chain. I can say I hope not, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if that is the course that this case follows from the 16th to the 18th of September and beyond.
It is Friday, the 16th of August of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she is snoozing herself at the moment, so we will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the Diner of Life. Indeed. Well, little update on Precious, because that's what we've been doing now. She's quite spunky, and I'll take it. Decided to mostly sleep on the floor near the bed last night. Now, Gunner likes to sleep under the desk, so that's his spot. And he will move out to his pillows in other parts of the house. And Precious has been pretty much doing the same, but she stayed fairly close all night last night. But then when we got up and she went out and did her business shortly after I arose, she decided, well, she's going to climb up on the sofa, which I consider to be a good sign considering the neurological issues that are part of this terrible disease that she has. So she's able to do that, and I'm okay. I'm okay with it. So appetite seems good, which reminds me I need to get to the pet store here in town and get some more food for both of them, canned food, because I mix it with their kibbles. They like that. And I do too. I like it for them. All right, so that's that update, and a good thing. Yes, indeed. Not too much to say on the home front in terms of politics, except that there is a bit of pushback on the local Politico, one of them. There are 3 county commissioners, supervisors. They're called commissioners here, who make up the Josephine County board. And, of course, they've all been Republicans, of course. But there is the MAGA Republicans, which some of us call the MAGA Nazis. I don't know. They seem like it. Anyway, 2 of them were responsible for perpetuating this fraud that since 4-H is administered and has been since the beginning of 4-H by land-grant colleges, that means they're woke. Because obviously if the government is involved, that is bad. Government by, at least in this country, apparently, according to the MAGA Nazis on the Josephine County Board, determined that Christians are being discriminated against specifically, and we cannot have that. And so they defunded 4-H in a rural part of Oregon. And guess who got blamed for it? Yeah, the woke liberals, for not acquiescing and just giving them everything they want. It's really funny. I had months-long, years-long debates with people who just absolutely refused to believe that it was anybody's fault but the liberals. It is the liberals. They're commies. They hate our kids. And I'm like, look, none of this would have happened if the MAGA Nazis on the Josephine County Board, in their infinite wisdom, decided to use kids as a pawn in their culture war. Manufacture an outrage, sit back and watch everybody react. It's kicking the liberals. It's kicking the hippie. That is their prime directive. They don't need to accomplish anything. So there was some question about whether 4-H or anybody would be able to go to the fair, do the fair this year. Well, they were able to finally put it together, but it was a fair unlike any really in the history of the county fairs here in Oregon. And because of that, at least one of the MAGA Nazis on the board, well, let me put it this way. They forced one off, the most, reasonable guy, who said, why are you defunding 4-H? Because Oregon State administers them. This is nothing new. They've been doing this for over 125 years. And now all of a sudden they're woke. As if that's a bad thing, too. Let's be clear. What they mean is that they might have to share the fare with black people, Latin people, and people who aren't, I don't know, absolutely Christo-fascists. Because I got to say, the group that they decided to substitute for 4-H is a Christo-nationalist group. I mean, come on. So because of that, one of them, Commissioner West, is under a recall petition at the moment, and he may be recalled because people are waking up to the fact that this whole fiasco about our state or our county fair is because of the stupid MAGA Nazis on the board. Can we just please live a little bit without all this outrage all the time? And I cannot tell you how many times I had, and I got suspended also for bringing up facts, posting articles of factual nature, but of course they're fake because they come from reputable magazines and journalists. And I'm not talking just corporate media. Anything that doesn't hew to their thin little view upon what the world is in their fevered little paranoid minds. Everything is fake. It's totally discriminating against us, and we're Christians. I mean, God. You can't go anywhere in America without a city named after their saint. A bridge. Gee, St. Augustine's Bridge. Yeah, Christians are discriminated against here in the United States of America. Well, let me put it this way. True Christians don't believe that. Only heretics. Yes, there I said it. I'm using the H word. They are heretics. And the reason we have a separation of church and state is because I'll be damned. We'll all be damned if we let a bunch of heretics tell us what God thinks. How dare they? How dare they? When we all know that God works in mysterious ways, whatever God is. So there. Okay. I just don't understand the complete lack of critical thinking. We used to have this discussion when I was in grade school and Catholic school, and I thought it was all kind of like settled. If God is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, why the hell would God care about petty little bullshit like politics? Who gets to lead a bunch of ants? Give me a break. We're lucky God doesn't just stamp the ant trail out. And according to biblical record, God has. A couple of times. I'm tired of these humans. Wipe them off the face of the earth. Jeez. You would think that God had human traits and frailties of human nature. Like get back, retribution. What the hell? We used to have these discussions in Catholic school and grade school. God is omniscient. God is omnipresent, and God is omnipotent. God doesn't give an F about our petty little material concerns on this tiny speck in the infinite cosmos. So can we all just maybe get along? All right. And here I thought that was settled. Apparently not. The age of Aquarius got taken over by some sort of war god like the age of Aries. I always tell people I'm an Aries, but for entertainment purposes only. Okay? Just so you know, if anything goes wrong, it was for entertainment purposes only, meaning I was only joking. That's what Aries do. Okay, enough of that. It's Friday. We had a fairly long rundown by Kirshner there about Trump's continuous attempts to delay. And we know why. He's either going to prison or Vlad's going to find him, an exit point from a 5-story window somewhere. Because Vlad is not very mysterious in the way he works. Not at all. All right, what do we have in store for you in the Bistro Cafe for today on, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? Yes. Governor Glenn Youngkin's administration failed to provide timely tax refunds worth hundreds of millions of dollars to Virginia corporations 2 years in a row. 2 years! So much for being business friendly. Mark Meadows tries to move his charges in Arizona's fake electors case to federal court. He's claiming presidential immunity as the chief of staff, organizing and administering the crimes. Okay. And Florida election officials warn of a MAGA-fueled false rumor about ballot markings days before the state's primary. There's a rumor that says election officials, if they mark your ballot, they're going to throw it out. What? But only MAGA Republican ballots. Okay. I don't know. Sounds Russian to me. After the break, speaking of which, we move to the chef's table where a U.S.-Russian dual national woman will be jailed for 12 years. Count them. 12 years on treason charges. For what did she do that constituted such a severe sentence for treason? Well, she made a $52 donation to Ukraine. Ooh. And Claudia Sheinbaum, the first woman in history to win the country's presidential vote way back on June 2nd, has finally been formally declared Mexico's president-elect. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. By becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you are not only helping us put a big dent in the, paying our bills. You do. Yeah, I'll tell you what else you do. You are actually allowing us here at Netroots Radio to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. If you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, as a few of you have for many, many, many years, well, I'll tell you what happens. That helps us put a big dent in those bills, and we pay those bills, and we fly under the radar, and we continue this powerhouse of resistance as the founders originally intended so many, many, many years ago. So if you could send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, that would really help. So please do. Please. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on the social medias, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those. Thank you, Tom. And Kelly takes care of the Facebook page mostly. and we thank her for doing so. And she and Ricky both have a show Saturday night, Sunday morning, so check that out. The Late Night Early Morning Talk Show starts at 9 p.m. on the West Coast. That's midnight on the East. So check it out. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you, Tom. Alrighty, and go ahead, follow me on the social medias at Justice Putnam, because I post the show notes and links diaries on Daily Co's while we still have Daily Co's. 10 minutes before showtime, and that way you have quick access to the actual reportage by the actual reporters. That's right, from which we draw great inspiration from here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, Audible, wherever podcasts can be found. All right, we better get right into it here. Laura Vozella from the Washington Post brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Governor Glenn Youngkin's administration failed to provide timely tax refunds worth hundreds of millions of dollars to Virginia corporations 2 years in a row, an error made public this week after Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears inquired about an odd footnote in a financial presentation to the House and Senate money committees. Somebody was trying to slip something through. After Youngkin, Republican, gave an upbeat assessment of the state's finances to the committees on Wednesday, Finance Secretary Stephen E. Cummings presented the members with a slideshow with more details. One of the slides noted a, quote, backlog of corporate refunds that had accumulated from prior years, end quote, and Earl Sears, a Republican, asked about it. Cummings acknowledged that the administration had pushed aside the routine work of processing corporate refunds in its haste to mail tax rebates to individual taxpayers in the fall of 2022 and 2023. The timing of the individual refunds, which landed in mailboxes just before Election Day of both years with Youngkin's signature on them, was widely criticized as politically motivated, do you think? Youngkin, who often complains that Virginians are overtaxed, won $5 billion in tax relief in his first 2 years in office, including the 2 rounds of tax rebates for individuals. Who's buying votes? As the Department of Taxation issued those rebates, Cummings said, it diverted staff from processing routine corporate refunds because corporations don't vote. See how that works? Corporations are people, my friends. Money is people. Money is speech, my friends. Yeah. All right. So those corporate refunds owed not due to any tax breaks, but because the businesses had overestimated their earnings. The state of Virginia, run by Republicans, was stealing corporations' money and using it for their own nefarious purposes to buy votes. Well, in this reporter's opinion, in the time when rebates were being processed, which was crunch time, resources were moved to really focus on that, and a team actually was taking focus off of corporate refunds, and it happened more than once in more than one cycle. Cummings said it was, well, frankly, just pushed aside. The error resulted in about $230 million in overdue refunds for 1 year alone, attributable to 2021 tax returns, according to another footnote in material Cummings presented to the money committees in May. I think they've opened up a Pandora's box, and the interest will not only be by the media, but the money accrued for stealing people's money. Biliou of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Former Donald Trump presidential chief of staff Mark Meadows wants to move his charges in Arizona's fake elector case to federal court, just as he unsuccessfully tried to do last year in an election subversion case in Georgia. But that was before the immunity decision by the MAGA SCOTUS. In a court filing that was made available on Wednesday, attorneys representing Meadows in Arizona asked a federal judge to move the case to U.S. District Court, arguing Meadows' actions were taken when he was a federal official working as Trump's chief of staff. They also said they would later seek a dismissal of the charges in federal court because of that immunity ruling. Well, U.S. District Judge John Tucci, who was nominated to the bench by former President Barack Obama, has scheduled a September 5 hearing to consider Meadows' requests. Meadows faces charges in Arizona and Georgia in what state authorities alleged was an illegal scheme to overturn the 2020 election results in Trump's favor. President Joe Biden won Arizona by 10,457 votes. Some people say that's not close. Some people. While not a fake elector in Arizona, prosecutors said Meadows worked with other Trump campaign members to submit names of fake electors from Arizona and other states to Congress in a bid to keep Trump in office despite his November 2020 defeat. Now they're not going to be fake electors anymore. They'll just be, what? What do you call them? They're still fake. The Arizona indictment also says Meadows confided to a White House staff member in early November of 2020 that Trump had lost the election, because part of Trump's defense is that I didn't know I lost. I am the rightful president of these United States, and the courts granted me immunity. Last year, Meadows tried to get his Georgia charges moved to federal court, but his request was rejected by a judge, whose ruling was later affirmed by an appeals court. The former chief of staff has since asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review that decision. In their filing, Meadows' attorney said nothing their client is alleged to have done in Arizona was criminal. They said the indictment consists of allegations that he received messages from people trying to get ideas in front of Trump or seeking to inform Mr. Meadows about the strategy and status of various legal efforts by the president's campaign. In other words, they were conspiring to commit a crime. Richard Taylor, a spokesperson for Democratic Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, the office of Chris Mays, which filed the charges in state court, declined yesterday, Thursday, to comment on Meadows' request. Mel McDonald, a former county judge in Metro Phoenix, who also served as the U.S. Attorney for Arizona during Reagan's first term, said Meadows has a better chance than any of the defendants in the Arizona case in moving their case to federal court because the allegations center on a federal election and because of Meadows' work as a federal official. So if you're a federal official, you could break the law? Okay. It does have some federal fingerprints on it. Well, yeah, he was running for president, and he was committing crimes. And his chief of staff was out there committing crimes. In all, 18 Republicans were charged in late April in Arizona's fake electors case. The defendants include 11 Republicans who had submitted a document falsely claiming Trump had won Arizona. Another Trump aide, Rudy Giuliani, and 4 other lawyers connected to the former president were also charged. And earlier this month, Trump's campaign or former campaign attorney, Jenna Ellis, who worked closely with Giuliani, she got COVID from him, signed a cooperation agreement with prosecutors that led to the dismissal of her charges. And Republican activist Lorraine Pellegrino also became the first person to be convicted in the Arizona case when she pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge and was sentenced to probation. Meadows and the other remaining defendants have pleaded not guilty to the forgery, fraud, and conspiracy charges in Arizona. And Trump was not charged in Arizona, but the indictment refers to him as an unindicted co-conspirator. A court filing last week by the AG's office in Arizona revealed that the grand jury that filed the case wanted to consider charging Trump, but a prosecutor urged against doing that. Swanson at the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An unfounded claim that election workers will invalidate ballots by writing on them is prompting election clerks in Florida to correct the record ahead of next week's state primary. Clerks in Collier and Escambia counties, home to Naples and Pensacola, are reassuring voters that the warning that some have encountered on social media and in texting conversations is inaccurate and that ballot markings will not disqualify their votes. Election officials say the claim, which has circulated online nationwide since at least 2020 by right-wing propaganda sites, we should add, is an example of the kind of misinformation that often spreads among well-meaning voters but threatens to erode trust in the voting process. How well-meaning are they? The false claim comes as Republican presidential nominee Trump has primed his supporters without evidence to expect election workers and partisan actors to meddle with the results and steal the election from them like they do every time. Polls also show that confidence in election results is at historic lows because these damn Republican Nazis have been playing the rest for how many decades? The false claim has circulated both as copied and pasted text and as a screenshot of a text message shared on social media. It purports to come from a poll manager who recently completed a training. Poll manager? The verbatim claim has spread online and been debunked over the years in several states, including Florida, Massachusetts, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Texas. And depending on the jurisdiction, there might be legitimate reasons why an election worker might mark a ballot. A recent fact check from the North Carolina State Board of Elections explains that election workers in some of that state's counties write voter precincts on ballots during early voting so they can be properly sorted after the election. Well, that's a big conspiracy, isn't it? And that also brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, a different kind of parent trap. M. Night Shyamalan is so known for his signature plot twist that he's practically an adjective. However, the surprise in his latest offering, Trap, doesn't revolve around such a twist, but instead on something far more unexpected. Empathy for a cold-blooded serial killer. It's not a surprise that the lead character Cooper, played by Josh Hartnett in a career-defining role, is the butcher. When he's not ruthlessly kidnapping and murdering, Cooper is a caring family man, here fulfilling his teenage daughter's dream by taking her to see her pop idol Lady Raven in concert. However, Cooper soon learns that the concert is really a sting operation to catch him, so he has to figure out an escape before the cops can close in. It's not an easy task, but one gets the impression that Cooper couldn't have been as successful at his secret avocation if he weren't damn smart. The film becomes a game of cat and mouse, with Cooper's nemesis turning out to be an FBI profiler, played by the legendary former child star Hayley Mills, who always anticipates his next move. While Trapped is ostensibly about a killer, it's also a meditation on family and the secrets that all families have. Casting Mills, the original star of the Disney classic The Parent Trap, is cute, if not brilliant. Also keeping with the family theme, Shyamalan casts his daughter, Salika, as Lady Raven. While it's tempting to write her off as a nepo baby, Salika shows real talent both as a singer and an actress, though more for the former. That, along with her photogenic features, makes her a captivating performer with a potential career. Overall, Trapped is one of Shyamalan's better offerings of late. While there are some credulity-straining moments, it'll keep you engaged. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In the last report of our series on protections against overturning the presidential election, we consider what happens if the state official authorized to certify your state's election results refuses to do so. It's not as far-fetched as you think. Ohio's hyper-partisan Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, made no attempt to hide recent partisan attempts to change the rules for citizen ballot initiatives, try to stop initiatives his party didn't like, and aggressively purge black and brown voter registrations. Pro-democracy organization PublicWise is also tracking statewide officials' considered election threats, including the election board chair and vice chair in Wisconsin, the Secretary of State in Florida, and the lieutenant governor of Georgia, among 7 battleground states. Democracy Docket disturbingly pointed out that in states including Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Nevada, candidates elected November 5th could be sworn in before the federal December 11th certification deadline, meaning an incoming governor or Secretary of State election denier could be the executive authorized to certify. Most states have penalties for willful obstruction of election proceedings. Failing that, the U.S. Justice Department could enforce the new Electoral Count Reform Act, Voting Rights Act, or civil rights laws. Those may not keep rogue officials from trying. We've linked to more analysis at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting a tad warmer temperatures than yesterday, should be in the upper 80s, with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Generally clear overnight with lows in the upper 50s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then partly cloudy in the morning tomorrow, Saturday, with thunderstorms developing later in the morning and continuing throughout the day. Highs in the upper 70s, low 80s, winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we're looking at about a third of an inch of rain, which is a considerable drop coming from this thunderstorm. Let us hope it's enough rain to put out any fires that could be started by these blasts. And then drying out period on Sunday and Monday, with temperatures back around 80, low 80s, mid 80s. Grass pollen is rated low here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 40 parts per million. And that daytime UV index is high, ticking down to level 7, which is actually what it was yesterday, but it had been at 9 and 8 for a considerable time. So we're getting our fall angle of the sun, and that's reflected in our UV index. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.05 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles as a result. And relative humidity is at 88%, a little muggy. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. It is. London is 76 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 78 and cloudy. Rome is 95 and sunny with a moderate heat advisory. Kabul is 78 and clear. Hong Kong is 84 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 81 and cloudy. Auckland, New Zealand is 55 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and sunny with a small craft advisory on the bay and offshore. Chicago, Illinois is 76 and fair, and New York is 82 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche. here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. U.S.-Russian dual national Ksenia Kavana was convicted yesterday, Thursday, of treason in a Russian court and sentenced to 12 years in prison on charges stemming from a donation of about $52 to a charity aiding Ukraine. This indeed, of course, is a follow-up to previous reporting on this case. Kavana, identified by Russian authorities by her maiden name of Karolina, was arrested in the Ural Mountain city of Yekaterinburg in February and pleaded guilty in a closed trial last week, as reported here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Kavana, a 33-year-old former ballet dancer, obtained U.S. citizenship after marrying an American and moving to Los Angeles. She had returned to Russia to visit her family. She had her phone confiscated after arriving in Yekaterinburg in January, and police found evidence on the phone of the donation. She made the donation in Los Angeles. Soon before her planned departure, she was jailed for 15 days on petty hooliganism charges and then charged with treason. Russia's Federal Security Service said she proactively collected money in the interests of one of the Ukrainian organizations, which was subsequently used to purchase tactical medical supplies, equipment, weapons, and ammunition for the Ukrainian armed forces we mean to crush into... Well, back to the article. The rights group, the First Department, said the charges stem from a $51.80 donation to a U.S. charity. The trial took place in Yekaterinburg, about 880 miles east of Moscow. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said that the conviction and sentencing of Kavana was nothing less than vindictive cruelty. He said U.S. officials were working to gain consular access to Kavana. Staff at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Claudia Sheinbaum, the woman who won Mexico's June 2nd presidential vote, has been formally declared Mexico's president-elect, the first woman to hold the office in Mexico. At a ceremony yesterday, Thursday, the former Mexico City mayor was handed the legal ruling declaring her the country's next president. The ruling had been delayed by appeals before the federal tribunal for elections. Sheinbaum will be sworn in as president on October 1st instead of the usual December 1st swearing-in ceremony. The transition period was shortened after Mexican legislators deemed that outgoing presidents stayed too long in office. Sheinbaum will serve a 6-year term through 2030. She has pledged to follow all the policies of her predecessor and political mentor, outgoing President Obrador. She wasted no time in saying that Obrador's hugs, not bullets policy of not confronting the country's powerful drug cartels was here to stay. The policy, which stresses handout programs to reduce the pool of cartel recruits, has proved ineffective at stemming the wave of drug violence. So let's continue hugging them. The war against drugs will not return, Scheinbaum said. Well, okay. Scheinbaum won with almost 60% of the vote, about double the number of her nearest competitor, Xochitl Gálvez. Gálvez had argued that López Obrador had used his influence and popularity to skew the race in favor of Scheinbaum. I bet he did. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.